And wait.
It's done. Yes, Mr. Frodo. It's over now.
Oh, that was inspired, Mike. That was a good shout.
Hello, welcome back to Toronto Till I Die, the Toronto FC fan show. I'm Mike Newell, and thank the maker above, the 2023 Toronto FC season is finally over. The last 3 months have felt like 3 years. Yeah, exactly. But at last, the players, the staff, the fans can all take a breath and try to hit the delete button on what is officially the worst ever Toronto FC season. On today's show, we'll briefly react to Toronto FC's 2-0 loss, season-ending loss against the playoff-bound Orlando City in Michael Bradley's last game. Get to some interesting comments from Jonathan Osorio and John Herdman in the post-game press conference. I think one of the guys, or all three of us, will vent on at least one thing that either surprised or pissed us off all season. And then, of course, we will get to the burning question presented by Nextdoor. Lots to dig into with my co-hosts, Jeffrey P. Nesker and Michael Singh. Gents, how did you take in the last regular season game of this awful 2023 year? Jeff, I'll go with you because I saw you for a bit and then I lost you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm seeing you now, and I know you're wearing a hat, but nice haircut, buddy. It's just reminding me that how badly I need to get myself one. So, and your fits were immaculate. What would you call that shade? Like a mustard shade of Roots hoodie with the black logo, and then that beautiful Henley coat. Your fits were insane on game night.
I wasn't going club colors, so if I'm not going club colors, it better look good, you know.
Yeah, I went the other way. I know it's hard to believe, guys, but I ain't 20 anymore, and I had a stacked day. I had Michael Bradley's final game at BMO, and then I had to hop, skip, and jump back to my neighborhood to go to Lee's Palace to see Gila Band, which is the best concert I've seen all year. It was unbelievable. But I dressed for Gila Band, so your boy was freezing, absolutely frigid cold at BMO in a way that I've never allowed myself to be because I'm smarter than that. And so, you know, I was suffering, man. I was suffering.
Imagine if it was a 7:30 game.
I know.
I mean, that was going around that the game was being delayed till 6:20 for some asinine reason, and my feet felt it. You know, like that was the longest first half I think I've experienced at BMO. It felt infinite because I was so damn cold. It was nuts out there, guys.
It felt like late October by the lake.
Yeah.
It did feel like late October by the lake. Mikey, how did you take in that final game?
Well, I mean, first, let me say it sucks that there won't be any more cold games for us to go stand in or be a part of, because obviously TFC aren't playing anymore. And, you know, best memories are standing in the freezing cold and trying to stay warm. So I would love to feel and taste some of that once again. Me personally, I was once again working MLSsoccer.com, and of course the biggest storyline was not Toronto FC for MLS Soccer. So I had the game on, and that was probably the game that I was locked into the most. You know, I was covering some more pleasant stories like the New York Red Bulls, who, by the way, shout out New York Red Bulls.
I knew you were going to go there.
Minute goal, and you know what the consequence was? CF Montreal did not make the postseason.
Did you see the gif of or the video of them like watching on the bench in Nashville?
Oh man, so sad.
And trying to see it, and then you just see Sammy being like, "And walk."
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, it's sad that it was Sammy P that you saw because I like him most of all. But yeah, it was bad. Speaking of cold weather, I'm just gonna ask: did either of you bite on the set 50% off black TFC parka? Because it was pretty gorgeous. I already have a shit hot parka though, so unless it's red, I wasn't even considering it, because the only reason I would get a second parka is one specifically for BMO nights.
I am quite proud this year of not providing the club any additional revenue outside of the odd beer here and there and ticket revenue.
You didn't go for the Harlequin kit? It was they were like
no.
giving them away. They were throwing them.
I know.
At people
Well,
at the
there's a
end.
reason.
Yeah.
There's a reason.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't go for any of the 50% off stuff. The lineups were well, they're always long at the end of the season.
They moved quickly, man. They moved quickly. I will say this, because my friend went in ostensibly to buy energy kit and came out with a scarf instead. But he motored through there, and they definitely got the crowd going. That's for sure.
Fair enough. Yeah, no. Usually I partake. This is how I got this a couple of seasons ago for like $40.
No, it's the best day ever. Yeah,
it was. But yeah, no, I wasn't feeling it this year. I think a lot of people. Look, a lot of people went and got this stuff. Like, clearly, if it's 50% off, I'm not blaming anybody for going and getting stuff. But there were a lot of people I spoke to in the stands who were like vehemently, I am not giving this club another dime of my money, given the way that this season ended. You can't even blame them either, right? And I think, that maybe just goes into the first segment here in terms of, like, the game itself. Like, obviously, look, it was a 2-0 loss to Orlando City. I don't think that a wholly unexpected result, but I will give the team credit, right? I think for 50, 60 minutes, it was a better performance than we've seen out of this group in a month, maybe a little bit more than that. I wanted to get your guys' thoughts in terms of, what you saw out there for the first sort of 60 minutes before Orlando said forget it and actually brought in parts of their actual 11 into the team to sort of take over the second half.
Yeah, I think that's worth emphasizing, right? You're playing a heavily rotated Orlando side, because they virtually had nothing to play for, or like literally didn't have anything to play for.
They couldn't go up or couldn't go down. Yeah,
their seed was locked in at number 2 there. So yeah, and I agree. Toronto FC played probably the best bit of football that we've seen them play, but that is with aforementioned asterisk that I mentioned there off the bat. I think we started to see some of John Herdman's tactical identity come into play, though. Specifically, I think John Herdman has made it pretty clear that he's going to be playing with a back 3 with Toronto FC moving forward. I think one of the things that he said after the match is that when you look around MLS and you look around, some of the teams that have attacking DPs and their front line is loaded with DP talent, it's really effective when you use a back 3 against some of those threats. And if you look at the majority of teams around MLS, they have attacking DPs. So I think it's quite clear that he's going to be playing with a back 3 in some way, shape, or form. Probably a little bit of national team vibes too. So yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I read that too, and my knee jerk was, oh yeah, that's obvious. But after a few seconds, I was like, is this somebody coming up with like quiet quitting? We invented a new terminology. No, it's existed forever. You've just given it a new alliterative term, because it does seem so simple. Oh yeah, let's just play like a 5-3-2 or a 3-5-2. And certainly we enjoyed some success in 2017 there. But it did reek a little bit of like Charlie and his Chocolate Factory, like just getting in there and going, I figured it out, guys, at 3-5-2. And I was like, are we in for it? Now naturally, I have some TFC PTSD. And I'll own up to that. But like my knee-jerk reaction versus my more measured, at least what I would consider a measured take after the fact, couldn't have been more different. So it's funny to me. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I sure loved it when I read it for the first 15 minutes.
I get what you're saying there, Jeff, but I think for at least parts of the first half, it was working, actually. I think obviously Emi Mabika going down sort of changes the calculus a little bit. You kind of have to drop Michael Bradley into that center back role and be part of that back 3. And as you said, Mike, in the press conference, John talked about it, the fact that was unfortunate. It will be interesting to see what they kind of do with Emi Mabika, if they kind of look at him as sort of like a reclamation project in a way. It's something John Herdman is quite obviously famous and known for these reclamation projects. And it could be one of those situations where I know, look, like Emi Mabika sort of started hot, and I mean hot for where TFC were at the time and the quality that you were seeing, and then had a massive drop off in confidence, right? And I wonder if that's part of this whole sort of plan. Obviously, we're not going to see the whole thing yet because the offseason's just begun. There's a lot of work for the team to do, but he is maybe one of the players that you could look at and say, like, could be a quintessential case of John Herdman putting an arm around a very, very large individual, and sort of saying, hey, let's build your confidence back up.
Definitely, right? His best bit of football was that stretch where he came in after he was acquired and under Bob Bradley. And ever since Bob Bradley was fired, it seemed like Terry Dunfield couldn't really find a way to get the best out of Mabika. If you can recall, I believe Mabika was dropped before maybe even Terry's first game. He might have been dropped right away from the 11, or he was pulled early. And then, his confidence wavered and had some plays that really stood out in terms of maybe not giving the amount, or at least visibly, it kind of seemed like he didn't give full effort on certain plays. And I think that kind of just piled up and piled up. And yeah, he's definitely someone with talent. I think that's you can see that, like, him on the ball, he is one of the better center backs with the ball at his feet. Can cover ground fairly quickly. Like, to me, and maybe I'm jumping the gun a bit here, but maybe it's Kamal Miller vibes, where you can slot him into that back three as the left center back. I don't think he's a central center back. I don't think he obviously can't play on the wing back. So for me, like, he has to play one of those outside center backs in a back three because he does have some decent amount of space. So maybe he is that Kamal Miller kind of vibes there. But yeah, that's going to be John Herdman's work over this next couple of months now, is trying to figure out which pieces on this roster are worth kind of making into one of those projects. Emma Babika, one of the
you
benefits.
said it.
Yeah, one of the benefits of Mbiki is very cheap, right?
Yeah.
So why not take a gamble on a guy like that, and a guy who seems to have a really good head on his shoulders, which is something we'll get to, but that seems to be, once again, the motto for this team's offseason.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jeff.
Is it worth it? I mean, at the end of the day, no, but the prerequisite for a reclamation project is that when the going gets tough, you've at least got that baseline of fighting for the badge. Well, it's already 3 strikes there, and all 3 of them occurred on that third New York NYFC goal. That's one of the worst goals I think the team's ever conceded. So, I mean, granted, he's cheap. He's on the books. We've got a lot of other fish to fry. But, if you already know what's going to happen when the going gets tough, aren't you the fool for trying again? He's not the only center back in MLS. He's not the only center back in the world. I don't understand why, we have to settle. This is a full rebuild. I think the book's been written on Ame Babika. He doesn't make the grade. Like,
I don't think this is a full rebuild. Here. I don't think.
Well, no, it can't be, but it needs to be. And I think harping on players that have kind of shown their whole ass. Pardon my French, like M.A. Babika, when the going got tough and the chips were down, there are other players that deserve those attentions. I just don't think he's one of them.
Fair. I don't think you're completely off base there, but that I would say that if you were there was a lot of guys on this team, like a lot of guys on the team, you can say that about. And realistically, if you were saying like, hey, you know what? We're just going to get rid of every single player who had 1 or 2 bad moments where they just looked like they were out of it, we'd have 5 players on roster, right? Like, literally. But I'm not saying that.
I'm saying, like, if you put Petretta or Rosted up against Mabika, I choose Petretta, I choose Rosted. Because despite glaring deficiencies here and there and things like that, I never saw the anti-highlight reel that was a lot of Emi Babika's performances in a pretty necessary position.
Right? There are other factors. I mean, Petretta is the highest paid left back in Major League Soccer. Rosted almost makes $1 million. You have an opportunity to actually take that gamble on a guy like Mabika because he doesn't really cost much. So I don't know. Like, that's
you make good points. I just hate logic that's mitigated by cap hits. You know,
Yeah.
But that's
it's
part of the
annoying
math,
to
right?
be so myopic. You
No,
know?
but that's part of the part of the job that these guys are going to have to do in the off season is balance a
Agreed.
little bit of that with the math, right? Like that's just
Agreed.
a factor in it. And another player I wanted to talk about in this game was, I mean, I don't want to make this whole about the Eme Babika show. I mean,
No, I
Eme
was say
Babika's nice.
I'm laughing because we spent the first 10 minutes talking about
Right, Eme
Emeka.
Babika. But I mean, it's that kind of season, Mike. Really, it's that kind of
Mm-hmm.
season. But like, again, I think it's important to, as much as we're highlighting players that we think didn't have a great season, it's also important to highlight players that I think have shown consistency throughout the season. And Kobe Franklin,
Yep.
again, is another player that's getting a lot of shout outs from different parts of the coaching staff and the organization. And I thought, again, had himself a pretty decent game. And for,
100%.
again, those 60 minutes, looked like a player that belongs in MLS. That really, unless you go out and get a world-class right back, like to me, has kind of nailed the position there. Or you get somebody who is an MLS day in, day out starter, no doubter, like a Justin Morrow
No
kind of
need.
player. Right?
No
But
need.
I don't think
His position's solid, safe. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's he's kind of earned that spot until somebody takes it from him.
I'm kind of like shaking my head about there was a stretch during this time where during TFC's worst times where Kobe Franklin got dropped from the 11. And I'm kind of like shaking my head like how exactly did team staff figure it was best to play Brandon Cervania at a position at right back as opposed to letting Kobe run free and develop?
Oh,
Like
oops, wrong one.
maybe
That
hindsight
guy.
is 2020, and maybe that actually maybe was a good thing for his development because he did fade off a little bit and finish strong towards the end of the season. But yeah, man, he's a guy moving forward. We talk about once again cheap cap hits, a guy who's really effective on a cheap cap hit. And the one thing about Kobe Franklin, he's got that little bit of Richie Larea in him where,
Yep.
man, this guy wears it on his sleeve. This guy runs like no tomorrow. He's the type of player that would run through a wall for a head coach. And I think that's why John Herdman immediately shouted out Kobe Franklin after the game, because he's got that little bit of, X factor tenacity about him, which this team needs. They lack so much fight, and Kobe Franklin's got it at just 19 years old or 20 years old, whatever he is now. So yeah, really excited about Kobe's future here.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you also can say the same thing about Cuello as well, like in terms of coming in a spot. And again, not perfect, but looking solid and looking like a player that can, give you real minutes next year and move the club forward a little bit. And again, that's another player. And I know, Jeff, you love this kid to the moon. And maybe you want to wax a little bit about him. But I think, like, again, these are these bright spots. They're there, right, in this lineup. It's just...
Yep.
You kind of have to get out of the mood of holy crap, this has been awful, and kind of look at some of these individual pieces and see where you can continue to build into 2024.
Absolutely. I am fine with handing Cuello keys to the number 6 position. Let that be his to lose. And I'm fine with Kobe Franklin at right back. There are bigger fish to fry at this club. They're quality players. Like you said, they're not perfect, but you have to look at, Cuello wasn't even on the first team roster at the beginning of this season. Their ascent has been remarkable. It's one of the things that we don't talk about enough. It's one of the only positives about the season that players such as these two, and there are a couple more, DeAndre Kerr, I think belongs in the conversation, have found a way to be at least penciled in starters on this unbelievably dysfunctional team. They kind of took their own development for themselves. They staked a claim in this chaos, and I am so excited to see what they're capable of doing in a better environment with more cohesion. I was saying this in my column in a response to a comment on my column. There are they have mare games. They fade in and out. They're certainly not as consistent as we would hope. But I count at least twice a game when Kobe starts, where he does something like a ridiculous dummy or an absolute techie feint or like an unbelievably well-timed tackle. And I'm like, this kid's got it. He's a baller. And with Cuello, it's the same thing. You know, occasionally he does insane nonsense, but occasionally he reminds you of his pedigree. I mean, this guy's got that Spanish silkiness down pat. Yeah, I mean, the last thing I'm going to do is point out their deficiencies, because in the grand scheme of things, they're meaningless compared to the bigger issues at this club.
Fair enough.
I would.
Oh, sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
I would say Cuello's more consistent out of the two. I think. So I think I know before John Herdman arrived, Cuello was being molded and modeled to be Michael Bradley's replacement, right? That's who the club saw as their future number 6, and I don't know if next season's too early to hand in the keys. That's something, again, Herdman and his staff are going to have to assess. But I'm with you, Jeff. Like, I really loved what I saw from him, especially on the ball. When this guy was in the game, he saw passes and saw some patterns on the field that other TFC players did not see in that position. And that's just a compliment to kind of, that background, that Spanish savviness that he has when he's on the ball. Again, and I said this in the past, the next step for him is getting a little bit stronger and getting a little bit of that nastiness into his game as a 6. Because if you're going to be deployed in a single pivot, especially with the TFC's back on the ball,
that's fair. I mean, I would counter and say you don't have to worry about getting a studs out tackle if you pass it off quickly enough. But you're right. There, a 6, he has to be a little bit stronger with respect to being a single pivot in any system. He needs to eat his Wheaties over the break.
You would also have to surround him probably with the other right pieces in midfield, right? Like the one limit to his game is probably he's a little bit slow, but a lot of 6s in the world are. So there are ways to kind of get around that, especially when you have his on-ball ability. So he's going to be one to watch as to whether, is he the future number 6 starting next season for Toronto FC, or do they bring in someone to kind of bring in as a bit of a mentor, I guess, or someone to mentor Alonso Cuello in in position.
If only we had someone that has been playing a 6 at a high pedigree for like 300 something games that could, mentor him. Yeah. Aaron, just to correct, because yes, they were playing in a 3-4-3, but John Herdman has insinuated rather heavily that the way forward is 3 at the back. So we're just
that is 3 at the back.
Yeah, that's 3 at the back.
Sorry, but like a 5, with wing back play, like moving the fullbacks further back. So single pivot is what.
Yeah, let's sort of talk about you talked about big fish, Jeff. Let's talk about the 2 massive guppies that played on Saturday in Lorenzo Insigne and Federico Bernardeschi. Look, from my opinion, I thought they actually did not. I thought Lorenzo actually came out with a lot of energy and looked decent. I got my frustrations with Fede, and I can get into that later. But it was interesting, and I know we're going to get more into John Herdman's comments in a bit. But he did compliment them in terms of, really talking about the fact that they were bought in a little bit more in this game. Now, you can question whether or not that is basically because it's the last game and they're like, hey, I know I'm done here. I might as well just run it out and my season's over. And then I'm back to wherever I'm going. But I guess now that the season is over, and we've been speculating this for a while, so this is not new territory that we're covering, but did this feel like a end of a relationship kind of game? Like this is kind of like they didn't stick around much for the post game stuff. They didn't stick around for the Bradley team photo afterward, which has been probably widely talked about online. Did this kind of feel like a thanks for everything, we're out, arrivederci, we're gone? Like, or do you think there is a path for one of them to come back?
No more than this entire season felt like as soon as I can find a better suitor, arrivederci, I'm gone. I didn't see anything different. I'm sorry. I didn't see anything different. Telling people they look plugged in a 2-0 loss where we never looked like we threatened the net for even half a second. I forget, what is this garbage? These are empty platitudes. They bought in. Meh.
Did you just throw up?
In my mouth a little bit? Yeah, I did. I absolutely blew chunks in my mouth a little bit.
We've seen this like 3 or 4 times this season, and I don't know if John Herdman's fooled by this at all.
I hope not.
You know what? Let's run that John Herdman clip, because let's give everybody a sense of kind of what we're alluding to, and that way we can all work off the same footing here.
Yeah, I thought they put a hell of a shift in. That was there was some real commitment. I've seen them, breaking through the emotional response, of what we've seen in the past to, they're going to do it and then they'll turn around and start sprinting back 20 yards, which you've seen from both Lorenzo and Fede regaining it in that last 15 minutes. So, I mean, I'm taking all that information in. And I think in a better context with a better build and a lead in, I think we can get these players fully committed and dialed in. But at the end of the day, they have to be ready to win for this club. I think when we get more tactical cohesion, you see a lot of unforced errors from the DPs at the moment. I mean, I think that's normal. They're just starting to find that rhythm in how we want them to play. But that has to change. Those unforced errors have to change. I think they've got a high level of quality, and again, I really compliment their effort tonight. It was another level.
So that's John Herdman obviously talking about Federico Bernardeschi and Lorenzo Insigne after the match. He, as you guys heard, he praised their performance for the most part, with the caveat that they had maybe a bit too many unforced errors, which, it's fair. I think we've all seen that both players have quality. They are incredibly skilled and talented players. TFC fans have known this for a year and a half now. That's not what's at question. So John Herdman saying that doesn't really, he's not really breaking any news, right? We all see that. What John Herdman is failing to, I guess, really emphasize and mention here is the fact that for 90% of the season, these guys haven't given it their all when it comes to this all for one mentality. These guys haven't given it all when it comes to the badge or playing for the shirt, right? That's what they've done it in one game sample sizes. Like, I think back to the game after Federico Bernardeschi was suspended for his comments after Austin, right? Lorenzo Insigne comes out, has one of the best matches, maybe even the best match we've ever seen him play in a TFC shirt, when he had the 2 assists.
Probably.
So we've seen glimpses of them putting in 90-minute shifts, but if you're judging based off that, you're gonna be taking up a dark hole, because the seconds things go wrong at this club, those guys are the first ones to kind of bend and break. And I think that's the biggest issue, which, we'll get into more sort of some of the cultural stuff right now that's going on at the club. But it's quite clear for TFC fans who have watched this team for the last year and a half, that these two, they're a big part of the problem right now at TFC. And it kind of sounds like, honestly, the start of last season again, when you hear John Herdman speak about them, about, if we just had them in kind of the right situation, that they could be good players. It kind of sounds like,
and if my grandmother had wheels, she'd be a wagon. Like, can we just stop the insanity? Like, seriously, nobody has the secret sauce. There is no secret sauce. The Emperor has no clothes. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. I am so sick of the, if only, like, it's like that scene in Airplane where everybody's slapping the panicked woman and they're all getting in line and they think they can change her mind. And then they just eventually take pleasure in slapping the woman because it's fun. Like, this is insanity. And we all know the honest truth here. It's that we're being held hostage by these guys. Right? Like,
that's also the other part of it, Jeff, is like what factor of this does John Herdman have to go out and compliment them because he
That's
knows
what I was going to say. That's
no,
what
exactly.
How much of
And
this is him holding back?
It's nauseating. It's nauseating. Like, I think the secret sauce with these guys, and just permit me this thought experiment, is to stop doing this insanity where you're giving them participation medals and saying and coddling them on the head, and somebody have the balls to come out there and say, like, without any subtle insinuation, they're the problem. And if we could get rid of these guys, like, call their bluff, for Christ's sake, because this coddling them is going nowhere. I don't know if that's going to work. It might explode the club in a way we can't even foresee. But, oh my God, can we change the tune, please? Because this is just an insult to my intelligence. Like, no, they didn't have good shifts. No, they didn't play very well. We lost 2-0. We're paying these guys millions of dollars to sit around with their shoulders hunched and look like they'd rather be anywhere else. Stop gaslighting me. Stop gaslighting us. We have eyes.
I hear what you're saying, Jeff. I do think you can't come out and do that, right? One, if you are trying to get rid of them, you just tank their value, right? So that's one part of it. I think the other part,
we're not beholden to them.
No,
Who cares
you are.
about their value? Their value is garbage.
This is the problem, Jeff. We kind of are. We have painted ourselves a bit in a corner with these two players, right? Like, they're paid a lot of money, right? And it is going to be difficult to offload them this offseason. We might be able to do it, maybe, but it's going to be very difficult. Very, very difficult. Unless somebody, the most of the rumors out there now are about loan deals, right? So it's not about permanent, they're gone. It might at best be a loan deal, maybe. There is a reality where we may have to deal with them for another season, right? That's a reality. And I think if that's the case, though, Jeff, if that's the case, then the last thing you need to be doing is going out in press conferences and literally throwing them under buses. Do they maybe deserve it? Probably. Can you really do it? Can John Herdman, who has just come into the role and has just been on the bench for his first game, really do that after essentially 2 weeks on the pitch or 10 days on the pitch with them? No.
But Mike, we've seen this story before. And if Herdman is anywhere close to as smart as he'd like us to believe he is, then he's seen the story too, right? Like, we've seen this story before. It's the endless telenovela of being a TFC fan right now. It's not working. I have no faith that this is going to work.
I don't disagree with you. The problems are there. It's just the reality of what this contract situation is, right?
And I also take umbrage with the reality. It's sunk cost fallacy. And the sooner, and I've been screaming this in as many different ways as I can twist it for so long now that it's like I hate myself even leaving my mouth, but we're not making money on this sale. We're not recouping our losses. Abandon ye all hope that that's going to happen. We're not getting out of this smelling like roses. The sooner we come to terms with that and realize, it's a really bum deal, and it's an insult that Juventus is coming back and saying, hey, we'll take him off your hands for a 6-month loan to help ourselves out because Paul Pogba can't stop, juicing or whatever. And for your trouble, we'll do it to you, and you'll thank us for it. Yeah, it sucks. They're taking us over a knee. And we don't even have it, and we don't even get the DP spot back. But guys, that's what happens when you bet big and you lose. I don't understand why this hasn't computed yet. You don't get to keep, when you go to the craps table and you go all in and you're wrong, you don't get a mulligan. You walk out of there with your head between your legs and you go, God, I was stupid. I really should have quit while I was ahead. We don't get, you cannot have your cake and eat it too. And it's going to suck. We all know it's going to suck. At this point, it's not about, can we get away with it not sucking? It's about how bad is it going to suck and how much can we take? You let these two do what they did this year at this club for a full season. Next year, there's no club left. There's barely a club left now. So I at a certain point, you have to go, what are we doing? 25 million is the club's worth what? 300? At a certain point, you have to make these scorched earth predictions. They're ruining the club that I love. They're ruining it. And somebody somewhere has to somebody somewhere has to step in and say enough is enough. And it
Fair.
sure as hell isn't saying they put in a shift tonight. And oh my God, did you see how they tracked back? I was there. I didn't. I have eyes. They didn't
Alright,
do
Jeff.
that. Stop it.
Yeah, no,
All right.
I get what you're saying. Look, I get it. Like, I think you voice what a lot of fans are thinking, right? Like, a lot of
I'm
fans are
so
pissed off.
disgusted.
And it's funny because you talk about them ruining sort of the culture within the clubhouse, and we have a clip here from Jonathan Osorio. I know, Mike, you want to speak to this a little bit about brotherhood and whether there was a brotherhood in the locker room. Jeff, why don't you cue that up, and then we'll sort of talk.
That's clip
a little
2,
bit
right? Just checking.
I
That's
believe
clip
so.
2.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. See how the sausage is made. Here we go.
This club has a one for all motto. Was there a brotherhood behind the scenes this season?
The truth is no. The truth is no. We didn't do a good job of all sticking together. There's reasons for that. Many reasons for why that happened, but I think at some point it became too much, and the group wasn't together. There wasn't a brotherhood, and yeah, that's something, John coming in now, he's working on that. And to be honest, in the last 2 weeks, the team seemed more together than in a long time. After everything that has gone on this year, but yeah, there's a lot of work to do in that sense, and that work will begin starting next week.
So
Before we get technical,
Yeah.
sorry. Oh, sorry. No.
Yeah.
I'm pulling a Jeff. Go.
No, it's all right. So that was Jonathan Osorio just talking post game about sort of this idea around brotherhood and whether their locker room was together through most of the season. Look, we've talked a lot about that throughout the season on this podcast, about how this team did not look together for various reasons. Mike, I know you want to talk a little bit about that, or through that through line, because I think it fits into this conversation we've just been having with Lorenzo, with Fede, but I think also with the team in general, in terms of just being able to come together in adverse times.
Yeah, you watch that clip and it's sad. Like, first and foremost, it's sad watching that clip and just thinking about how far this club has fallen, and Jonathan Osorio has been through all of it. So seeing him kind of speak on that is a bit fitting. Shout out Neil Davidson for the awesome question, because just the straightforwardness and the framing of that question led to Osorio's really candid response. And again, it kind of ties back to what Jeff was ranting about, but we know why there wasn't a brotherhood on this club, right? There's factions that are behind the scenes that ultimately drive a lot of the club apart. That's the best way to kind of frame it right there. And Bill Manning, when I last spoke to him, which was John Herdman's introductory presser, which was about 2 months ago, he straight up admitted that this club had a broken culture, and they had to find a way to kind of rebuild that culture. To me, like, again, circling back, if you want to move forward, and if you want to emphasize brotherhood, and if you want to say something along the lines of, from now on, at this point in 2024, there will be no one that will walk through those doors that doesn't want to, play for the badge, and doesn't want to, disrespect the shirt, and won't disrespect the shirt. You have to start by getting rid and finding ways to get rid of Insigne and Bernadeschi, because when you talk about a lack of brotherhood, I'm telling you that those two are at the front of that. And the reason why or a big reason at least, why there's so much of a fractured identity there behind the scenes. That, and obviously the culmination of losing, that obviously builds a toll on in the dressing room, and maybe that's why, cracks start to happen, and that's why, bigger fractures start to happen. But man, if those guys could have held strong, you might be talking about a different tone, at least, of this season. I don't think there's really any real winning there, but you got to be talking about a different tone.
Yeah, and you could just see the defeat, like, in his eyes a little bit, which is, like you said, sad. For somebody who most likely is future captain. Let's be real. Go ahead, Jeff.
Make him captain. Oh my God! Like, close your eyes. His meter sounds like Bradley. Like, that was my first. Well, my first takeaway is that's maybe my favorite Oso haircut of all time. Like, he's had some good ones, but that one is immaculate. Number two, I think he gave MB4 a run for his money on dramatic pauses there. Like, those were some excruciatingly long dramatic pauses.
He said he's taking lessons.
He's taking lessons. Like, I'm telling you, close your eyes, and he doesn't even sound like Toronto man's Osorio sometimes. Like, he's got that Jersey accent. Like, there were a few moments, because I've watched those clips quite a bit. And I'm like, did he just say football like the Bradleys did? Like, with the football kind of thing? Like, just unbelievable. Him and Bradley, at a certain point, I might even do this. I might measure out who had the longest pauses. Bradley in his retirement, and Oso in this one, because they were they were excruciatingly long. Like, I was listening to them on audio only, and at least 5 times I'm like, okay, did my feed cut out? Because it was just dead air for like 2.5 minutes.
Well, if you like dead air, you might like the next clip we might play of Jonathan Osorio, because he did talk. He also did talk about lessons learned, and you can hear the Michael Bradley-isms in that. But I also think it's important, and it still connects to what you were talking about, Mike. This idea around lessons learned, not just within the locker room, but within the organization in general. And there's some things I want to talk about, and obviously we'll all talk through. But Jeff, you want to go ahead and play that clip?
There's a lot. There's a lot of lessons. I think that the club has to really regroup now and see where we have gone wrong in the last 3 years. What are the decisions being made that has gotten us to this point? And so I think the club has to analyze that deeply this off season. And these kind of, I don't think this is a season that just happened out of the blue. I think there's numerous things that have been happening over the years that has gotten us to this point. And so it can't all be fixed just in this off season, but I think there's necessary things and decisions that have to be made if we want to start turning this around.
Boom.
Well, this is what I've been talking about. This is what I talked about in my rant earlier in the season, right? This is not a 1-year thing. This isn't a 2023 problem. This is a problem that has been in the club since really the end of 2019, going into 2020 in a lot of ways. Obviously it starts with Greg Vanney.
Oh, whoops.
And it speaks to Greg Vanney's departure from the club and kind of works from there. And there's a lot of sort of hands that played a role in this, right? Whether you talk about Ollie Curtis, you're talking about Bill Manning, you're talking about, you're talking about other people in decision-making roles, Bob Bradley to a certain extent as well. But, I mean, Yeah, I mean, look, I think the issues are, frankly, is the decision making has not been good. This is something we have talked about over and over again on the
Mm-hmm.
show, and Osorio sort of spelt those things out. This decision making that's been happening for years, and there is a constant thread within that decision making. It is Bill Manning. I have said it several times. A lot of people have said it over the last couple of years, where it's you have to question some of the decision making from the top, and
Mm-hmm.
what that deep dive looks like, I'm not going to pretend to know. But it needs to be deep, and it needs to be, led not by Bill Manning. I think it needs to be led by Sean Rubio, who's been brought in for that reason to be technical director.
Yep.
And I think it needs to be kind of ruthless in a way that it not just addresses some of the issues of decision making and short term thinking in the way that the club gets built, but I think that it also needs to be transparent to the fans. I think the fans need some answers in terms of not just that this happened, but why, and why was it allowed to continue to fester for as long as it has. That's, I think,
Really,
how you get some people back.
I don't know. I'm sick of the postmortems because talk is cheap, and like, just win, just reward our sacrifices.
But you need to do that to win, Jeff.
Yeah,
that's how TFC's been trying to get away with this for a while, right? They've been trying to
agree
avoid
with you,
doing this kind of
but,
work.
But do you really want to read like the 40-page mea culpa from this and that player or this and that front office person? Do you really want the press conference that sort of skirts around the issues? Because no, I don't care anymore. I mean, like, it's bad. Fix it. What I care about is fixing it. I think the best way I can express it is, like, to me, that we only have a finite amount of energy and a finite amount of time, and so you triage. And I would rather look forward than look backward. I would rather all the energies of these people, including Bill Manning, because I don't think he's going anywhere. And my hope is, at the very least, that he appreciates that he needs to take his foot off the gas here and let the people that he's hired do their damn jobs, which he was very good at for some reason at the outset, and then got too big for his britches for whatever reason. Let's not even speculate. To me, it's just a simple equation. I don't like, if that energy is going to be spent on mea culpas and promises, forget about it. I don't care. Put that energy into scouting South America or whatever the case may be, right? And then the idea of full transparency, you're never going to get it. And I think it's dangerous to expect it. Because there are certain things they have to play close to the chest, for the same reason that we were just talking about why logic would suggest you get on the microphone and call the DPs out, because they sure as F deserve it. But there are other factors at play. You could negate their market value. Like, there's always causality to these sort of things. So to me, I just, I'm far less interested in hearing about the whys it happened, and far more interested in seeing a roadmap to never having to ever be in this position again.
Yeah, like, I don't know, 5 head coaches since the start of 2021, 3 different sporting directors or general managers, if that's what you want to call it. I can't even tell you the amount of different players that have come through Toronto FC, maybe close to 80, 70.
Boy has a number here in the comments.
70, 80 over the last 3 years, if not more. There's been roster turnover. And as I mentioned, Bob Bradley, man, I can't count on both of my hands the amount of times that Bob Bradley said the focus on this kind of recruitment strategy is for TFC to bring in good people and people who love the game. We're hearing the exact same thing, but instead this time it's just the way that John Herdman's framing it. Like, we're back through this cycle once again. We're now, okay, albeit it'll be a different decision maker when you look at Jason Hernandez as a general manager, different coach in John Herdman, so they'll have different eyes of who good people are, I guess, and different
Hmm.
expectations of mentality and all the, kind of intangibles that you need and to, I guess, recreate a culture. But it's the same thing over and over, and we're in a cycle now for at least the last 3 years that I don't see. Like, one of the things I wanted to ask people and want ask you guys this, like,
Hmm.
what is there that gives you hope heading into 2024 when you think about this Toronto FC team? Is there something that you can kind of pinpoint that, that's the reason why I'm hopeful for 2024?
Um,
I might get
it's
a PS5.
okay. So I think if there's something that will right now give me hope, it is the potential to now have someone like Sean Rubio who is in a position to make some of the technical and footballing decision and removing, maybe not removing Bill Manning directly from all of those kind of decisions, but adds an additional layer that kind of insulates the footballing staff from sort of
Checks and
the
balances. Yep.
yeah, that gives me some hope. Now, of course, the question is, look, there are bigger things within MLSE that are happening that you can read the news about, the board and things like that, that give me pause for concern, that are beyond anything we can control
Hmm.
as a fan base, and frankly, as any staff at TFC can control. But I think that's the one thing that can give me some hope, is that there is someone in place that can make those decisions along with Jason Hernandez and along with John Herdman, that can sort of figure out, okay, who are the key pieces in the team that are going to be here to build again. And yes, you are right, Mike. You're completely right. We are in another loop. We are in a MCU time
Hmm.
loop right now. But I keep going back to the fact that there's sort of the one constant within that time loop. It is the president, right? And that is something that I believe has to be looked at. I know it won't be. He's not going anywhere. But if to answer your question, I think Sean Rubio being a technical director and being that extra level gives me hope. Jeff, what about you?
Very, very fair. I mean, listen, you don't hire an auteur and then micromanage them. It's simple. And in film history, there have been a lot of producers that made that mistake once, twice, and then realized their mistake and hit it out of the park. The next round, working with the same auteur director. That's my hope. My hope is that public pressure, private pressure, despite the fact that it's an unbelievable chaos at MLSE right now, and despite the fact that Bill Manning's seat isn't even close to as hot as most people would like to suggest, that ego and hubris, there's no room for them anymore. There's no that the cupboards are bare and the emperor has no clothes, and now ego and hubris, which I think have played too high a role in shenanigans in the back room, there's no place to hide, and Bill is forced into a decision that maybe he doesn't want to concede that power, because who likes to give up power? But it's the right thing to do. It's certainly it's the right thing to do. You've hired auteurs, let them do their jobs, stay out of the way. John Herdman isn't going to succeed at this if he's kneecapped at every angle, in the same way as Bob Bradley was never going to succeed if he's kneecapped at any angle. That's my hope. My hope is that cooler heads prevail, or at the very least, public pressure has created a situation where people can't hide behind ego and hubris anymore, and the right moves get made almost in counter to how people would rather be treated, make them go.
Mike, what about you? I mean, you asked a question, so I know you're looking for our responses, but what about yourself? Like, what do you see that gives you potential hope for 2024?
I'm smiling because I honestly couldn't think of an answer. Like, I think the obvious answer is probably Herdman. However, even then, you probably have some question marks
Huge.
Oh, I have question marks.
about whether,
Oh yeah.
yeah, he's the guy to, again, I don't want to take discredit or anything because I think it actually was a fantastic hire, but kind of along the lines of what Jeff was saying is that we've seen literally 5 different people in this position and none of them have been successful, including a guy who is the second most winningest coach in MLS history. And before people say, oh, 2 of those people were interim coaches, well, they have a couple of people who are interim coaches that are now full-time coaches that have led their team to the MLS Cup playoffs this season.
Correct.
So it is possible for an interim coach to go on and secure the full-time job. I mean, heck, Terry Dunfield's name was among those considered, as Bill Manning quite clearly illustrated when Bob Bradley was sacked. So yeah, I look at this not necessarily that Manning's had 3 stabs at it, but he's had 5 stabs at really getting the
it's
right
crazy.
guy here at Toronto FC. So I can't even really full-fledged point to Herdman and be like, okay, Herdman's going to save this team, because I think there's other factors at play. What really doesn't give me hope, again, is those DP contracts, man. And when you look at the contracts, like, I don't know if there is a way to get out of them without either the Italians taking a big pay cut, like they hate
Not
it here so
happening.
much that they take a pay cut to go play elsewhere, or Toronto FC gets so sick of them and somehow, some way convince the board to eat some of their salary in order to facilitate
That
a
budget's going to
move.
be bad if they have to.
Exactly. And that's also,
the
that's
only
obviously
way.
the repercussion, right?
Yeah.
So if Toronto FC's priority, MLSC's priority actually was winning, they would find a way to kind of eat those contracts, eat some of those contracts. However, as we know, it's a business. They're the reason why Toronto FC don't actually have 3 DPs this year, and why Jonathan Osorio was considered that third designated player. I know people know that, but it's really gives you food for thought of kind of the position where Toronto FC and MLSC are in. The one, I guess, positive is they do have a ton of cap space to play with, so you can bring in a lot of what do you say, like MLS regulars.
Yeah,
I guess they're going to have some international roster spots, so if they find a way to recruit efficiently, great. Herdman pointed to FC Cincinnati as kind of being the model, which is I just find just
that's hilarious.
considering-
That's never not going to be funny. Yeah.
considering where FC Cincinnati was just 2 years ago and where Toronto FC is now. But in a way, it's kind of fitting because Toronto FC, let's face it, they're the new FC Cincinnati, right?
Well, they're
New, everything old is new again. Yeah.
Well,
they're
that's
the
what I was
new
about to
old
say.
FC Cincinnati, yeah.
Well, no, we're the old TFC again. We're
Mhm.
back
We're
to
worse.
being the
We're
old
worse.
TFC again.
We're
Like, we
worse.
really are. And that's the scary part for me, is that we have returned to the dark times. Because when you're
I
talking
think it's
about
so much worse.
Well, maybe. Well, yes.
You
because
actually
there's
spend
more
money now.
They actually spend money.
Yeah.
Now. That's the crazy part. But like, you're talking about 5 managers, whether permanent or temporary, in 3 seasons. 50 players or around that this season. How many countless over the last 3 seasons? That's old TFC. That is old TFC. For those who know, who were there during the dark years, that's exactly what happened every single season, and it's happening again. And it's a scary time now. Hopefully, the hope of Sean Rubio being here, of Jason Hernandez having full control from a GM perspective. It sounds like from John Herdman's post-game press conferences, there are plans in place and structures in place that they want to put in with the first team. Let's see if they work from that perspective. But as much as there could be some optimism going into the season, there's equal right for people to feel a little bit afraid, because you're another season away from this from being another 2012, 2013 kind of season, where you've got different decision makers who have different visions on how the club should be built, all fighting for control. That's why you ended up 0-9.
That's my worry as well. It's my worry as well.
And I won't go into that much longer. That's a whole other podcast, I think, if you want to go back to the history of that. But yeah, that's I can see one way where it works and another way where it goes like that. Sorry, Jeff.
I used to harp on allowing for the pandemic margin. because of what it created. You know, when we were talking about the misfire on Soteldo, and maybe even the Ali Curtis misfire, although that is a different beast altogether. But just to simplify, you know, I had a lot of time for like, yeah, okay, we can't recruit as well as we did with Seba and you know, Victor, et cetera, because we're talking on Zoom and we're working at a Hartford. But we are years from the end of the pandemic now, and there are a lot of teams that suffer just as bad that have their S together now. So I'm not allowing for that anymore. I'm over it.
Oh yeah, there's teams that do
yeah.
way more.
Oh
with
yeah,
way
there's
less.
teams that have done way more with less. Like it's nothing to hang our hat on anymore.
No, 100%. Funny enough, though,
Yeah.
of the two teams that have come out of that period, maybe the worse off, it's the teams that kind of like swapped managers and players. It's LA Galaxy and Toronto FC. Like those are the two teams that kind of went in. I know the Galaxy weren't quite even there.
Well,
in
Montreal
2019,
got effed. Montreal and Vancouver got effed in terms of being in like a temporary stadium, same as we did. But you know, Montreal is aside from getting worked by that beautiful New York Red Bulls late minute goal, which will go down in history. And then you know, Vancouver, they're both on the ascendancy, right? We all thought Losada would be a disaster at Montreal, and he wasn't. Let's be honest, he wasn't.
depends on who you talk
He
to.
wasn't Wilfred Nancy, but he wasn't.
No,
you know?
but I mean, I don't think Kernan Losada sees next year as CF Montreal manager. Put it that way.
Probably not, because he tends to break teams. I mean, they can't eat when he's around. But you know, that's who I'm looking at, not at the.
But
LA
they're also
Galaxy.
like,
I'm looking
Jeff,
at the
to your
Canadian
point-
teams. Mhm.
To your point, they're also like the two of the lowest spending teams in Major League Soccer
Sure,
as well. And
sure.
they're like, this is the team
But
that wants to make
efficient.
Richie Larea its designated
Mhm.
player. And Richie Larea, I mean, he wouldn't be a designated player at Toronto FC because they have that standard of, you know, designated players and rosters and resources that they invest into this club. So there's a higher expectation. And yeah, look around the league. Literally every other team is doing less with more than Toronto FC. They're the second highest spending team, except for Inter Miami, who brought Lionel Messi halfway through the year. And they're going to be a team that's going to be a force for years in Major League Soccer because of the amount that they invest in their roster, and they're investing in, you know, what appears to be the right pieces right now. So
What appears
Yeah,
to be, I
it's-
think they're a deeply flawed roster, and we'll see it over the course of a longer season.
We'll agree to
Did
disagree.
that jersey arrive yet?
Yeah.
Come on, the day it arrived. You guys
It's gonna
will
come
know.
on draft day. That's when you're gonna get it.
Emergency podcast the day it arrives, just to celebrate all of its
Emergency
greatness. Yeah.
Yeah, emergency podcast, exactly. Emergency podcast when that arrives. Oh, we're gonna have to like, and here's a weird one, guys. I think we're gonna have to do like a proper super draft, like pod,
Guys,
because we
have
have the
you-
number one
have you
pick in the
seen-
super
Overall
draft.
pick, man.
Yeah, we
Have
got
you
the number one
seen the
overall pick.
videos that I've loaded into our StreamYard? We've got to do the episode where we go back on our over-unders.
Until
and how
TFC
wrong
decide
we
to
were.
trade
Yeah,
that
yeah.
pick.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
which
yeah.
it's TFC. They could legitimately trade the number one pick on the
Traded
super
last
draft.
week, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I did have a segment here where we're going to talk about the one thing that surprised or frustrated us during the 2023 season.
Just
but I
really
feel like we
quickly.
just spent an hour doing that.
Yeah,
so
just
it's
really
not.
quickly name the thing, because everybody thinks I'm going to say DPs. I actually am going to talk about the participation medal press conferences.
Okay, all right.
They
So
are
we'll come
insane.
to you in a sec. We'll come to you in a sec.
Yeah.
Then Mike,
No,
go ahead. What's the one thing that
Go,
surprised
Jeff.
you?
I gotta think about.
Oh, you got to think about it. Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, what the hell? I was in the middle. We'll come back to you. I already said it. They're insane. They're horseshit. They're insane. We are a professional soccer club. That's the most unprofessional thing I've ever seen in my life. It's not kindergarten where, you know, you can't say we love the fans, they're so sophisticated, and then just shovel it into our mouths. You know what I mean? Like, we have eyes. We're smarter than that. Don't make us hate you, you know? Because it's getting close. It's getting close to that gif. You are not serious people. Stop it. I'd rather have no press conferences than whatever the hell that is. Like, it does nobody any favors. Can we stop immediately? You know, I'm sure there are politics behind you getting out and saying this was shit. We're all shit. But there has to be somewhere in between the insanity that we're witnessing right now, because I can't take it anymore. Like, I don't want to watch the press conferences. That my bullshit detector, just like, my head explodes. I just can't do it. That's my pet peeve.
I know there's been times where in those press conferences there's been straight up lies that have been said. But that's also part of the game, right? That's what press conferences are, especially when you're this bad. Like, you kind of just want to wait to get to the end of it, and I think the end of season pressers are going to be a little bit more spicy than this last stretch. Well, on a positive, what surprised me, the emergence of Lonzo Coelho and Kobe Franklin, which we've talked about. Those are guys that weren't really on the team's radar to begin the season. They weren't supposed to really factor in the way that they did, but they absolutely did. Surprised that Sean Johnson was able to stick it through, and he's still a member of Toronto FC. Um, and then I'm surprised at the way that this whole Michael Bradley saga kind of unfolded. Um, I would have figured that there would have been a better way for Manning and the front office to reach this point where Bob had to get sacked, and then handle it a little bit better with Michael. Right? I'm not sure they really did that. So I'm surprised at the way that, we're at the end of the year and Michael Bradley has announced his retirement. And,
Hmm.
we'll get into the burning question shortly, but just surprised at the way that this is all kind of played out. And obviously not in a good way whatsoever. So, yeah, last positive. I'll end it on a positive. Surprised at the way at how they landed John Herdman. I think I think that's a really big coup for this club, considering all the things we talk about, budget wise. Uh, he was a guy that I think was a big time steal for this club, especially given what he accomplished with both the Canadian national teams. I think his name alone carries a lot of weight and will at least give some fans, I think, hope heading into 2024. So that's a big get, I think, for this club.
Yep.
Those are
Nike?
good. Mine is going to be completely off the board a little bit, and I'm going to get a heat from it from people I know, but that's completely fine. I'm a little surprised and a little frustrated about how things happen in the stands, specifically in South End and specifically in my supporters section and group, to be honest. I'm not going to go through all of it, but I'll just say this. I think, look, everybody, a lot of people always get upset with the South End. They don't coordinate and stuff like that. I understand that. When it's internal, when there are sometimes people who get into sport groups and forget why the groups exist and begin to put their own agendas into leadership, into group dynamics, it can degrade things very quickly. And I think that has happened. And I can only speak for my own in my own section. Yeah, I think I will just say that I think I'm really frustrated at the fact that there are people who have forgotten what this is about, and hopefully that gets fixed, but it can potentially lead to, I think it can lead to some
Benfica.
Yeah, I think it can lead to some bad things within the stand. So yeah, I will leave it at that. Put it that way.
And that's such a important point that you make, because obviously you're you're focusing on just the Kings of the North there, but I'm talking about the TFC fan base as a whole. This season has been really taxing and just taking a really big toll on
everybody and everything.
Everybody.
100%.
Exactly. And, being a supporter of this club and the amount that, I'm not sure what you're referring to specifically there, Mike, but the amount that I can imagine that this season has just like once again taking a toll on some of the energy and effort and devotion. Because man, the supporters, I have so much respect for the supporters that show up, when they can, game in, game out, and share the passion and energy and make BMO field as special as it is. It's because of obviously the supporter groups and supporters in general. So
Mhm.
like that's the first people I guess I think of, aside from obviously the players and staff at TFC, that I think of when I think about just how tired they must be after this season.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
everybody needs the reset to hit the reset button. Everybody needs to exhale. I certainly did. And I'm already feeling a weight off my shoulders now that I know that it's over.
Yeah,
You know?
I think, I don't think you could have said it better, Mike. I think really just this season has been taxing for a lot of people for a lot of different ways. And hit the reset button. Hopefully, there's an opportunity to just again, and a lot of it. Look, I think is just obviously just game after game after game after game, just feeling like
Of
people aren't
losing,
fighting for the
yeah.
badge and losing. Like losing is one thing. I've been in this club for.
I've been
to be
losing
honest,
since 1990. You
yeah,
know?
but I
Yeah.
mean, like realistically, like I've seen this team lose games in the most ridiculous fashion.
Oh yeah,
right. Like we
hilarious,
all have.
hilarious
So it's not the losing.
ineptitude.
The
Yeah.
losing I've seen. It's the nature of it. That's really the thing that's gotten to
The
me.
cynicism,
Yeah,
the just awfulness of it. Like
Yeah,
you have,
Putting
I
a
was
team-
saying at the game. Mhm.
Putting a team on the pitch that you want to root for, right? I think
Yeah.
that's so important.
Not
Like, showing up to games
douse in
that,
a bath of acid. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
there's so much going on behind the scenes that is very clearly, kind of spilling out onto the pitch. And it'd be much easier if you had I think a team on the pitch that was, dare I say, like easy to root for. This team is
Yeah.
not
No.
Easy to
root for.
hate.
It's-
This
it's
team
very-
was easy to hate.
I've said it before. This was an unlikable team. I did not
Yep.
really like this team. There weren't a lot of people on this team that I liked. And that makes it tough. Let's put it that way. Okay. Let's move on to the burning.
You know what
question.
else?
Go
I
ahead.
have an enormous respect for the supporters groups because, they always get levied with you guys aren't in unison. Well, Doppler effect. I mean, you're going to come at the king, pun intended. Do your damn research. Like there is an actual physical, reason why sound tends to coalesce like that in an auditorium. And so don't come out complain. And it must be so agonizing to hear it over and over again. Like it's your fault that physics exists and sound waves have a certain spectrum. Do you know what I mean? So I am in awe of that tight wire act. Things broke this year. I don't want to speak for you because I am not privy to the details. And certainly for you to come out and be public with that means that there are issues there. But yeah, I just think everybody needs a reset button. We all need to exhale. This year sucked. The three of us haven't even talked live. Like this has been a struggle every week to come on here. Like, I mean, I love you guys and I love talking about the team, but there have been weeks where all three of us are like, do we have to? Like, do we really? Like everybody knows this is nowhere, like what are we going to add to the conversation that doesn't, get us angry and get us, put us in the crosshairs of a fractured fan base. Like we have often had those conversations. Yeah. Let's take comfort in the fact that it's over and now we can look forward and see what's happening. Joao is saying, are we going to have these shows in the off season? You're damn right we are. We may take a few breaks when nothing happens, but when stuff happens, we're going to be here. We can't stop. We can't stop. We're addicted. This is the thing.
We're just prisoners in the little boxes on your screen every week. All right, let's do the burning question to wrap this thing up.
Yeah, indeed. I don't know where that one is, so give me 1 second. There it is.
Before I read that out, I believe somebody asked me if I'm going to the Forge game. Yes, I am going to the Forge CPL final this weekend. The burning question presented by Nextdoor. Nextdoor is the official community app of Toronto FC. It is also where you connect with the people and local businesses in your neighborhood. Download Nextdoor to find the soccer fans in your neighborhood, like on the Toronto FC fan community. We've been posting, interacting, posting clips on there. It's been a lot of fun. Join us there by downloading Nextdoor at the App Store or on nextdoor.ca. And the burning question this week, we asked you, after Michael Bradley officially joined his dad's coaching staff in Norway at Stabæk, that was announced earlier today, do you think our captain will one day return to Toronto FC? A couple of interesting comments. Almost all of them are no. But I'll read out a few here. Christopher on the Nextdoor Toronto FC community group just says, I don't think it's likely. It feels like the end of an era overall. And I think that was the overall sort of feeling and sentiment here from the fan base. Chrissy B just writing in, I don't think so. Saturday was the happiest I've seen Michael Bradley in ages, though he did get absolutely worked on that first Duncan McGuire goal. I mean,
oh my God, so exposed.
I mean,
it was
like
bad.
Hands up and clap to McGuire. That hit was
incredible finish.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Also, Michael Bradley's not a center back.
No,
not a center back, especially not the middle center back. He got cooked like so bad.
305 appearances to be like, Michael Bradley's
he got
center back.
He got cooked.
Also against Duncan McGuire, who's like the best rookie in the league and is going to be probably, I don't know, a $15-20 million player and scored 13 goals this season. I mean, it's not like he's going up against some scrub, right?
No.
But I think Michael actually did well to catch up to him. Just that hit was
beautiful. The second goal, though, I mean, Michael was never catching him on the second goal.
Never.
Never.
I mean, what's the age difference? Like he could be the kid's dad. Like the guy had all the miles on him. It was crazy. Actually,
yeah, probably could be close.
Probably.
Sorry, I'll just finish reading Christy's statement here. I also think he speaks five languages, so in his coaching career starts well. He has better non-MLS options. Spiro just writes and says, not under the current regime. I can totally see him being a good manager. He's got great leadership skills, work ethic, and he's learned a lot under Greg and his father. I'd love to see it one day, though. And then finally, rounding it off, Massimo just says, I always thought MB4 would go from playing to coaching in the TFC Academy. Let's talk about that in a sec. I was shocked to hear that he was leaving Toronto and now joining his dad. I'm convinced the relationship with the club soured this year, and I don't think he would come back under the current front office team. Let's talk about that a little bit, because had things worked out a little bit differently with Bob, I'm pretty sure we're looking at a Stabæk situation here where Michael Bradley retires and becomes
100 million %.
Not this season, but yes, in the future. I think
next
that
season,
was, that was the plan originally when Bob was appointed.
Yeah, and I wonder. Obviously, look, we speculated on when Bob was fired, what would this do to Michael's sort of vibe with the club? Obviously, you've mentioned, Mikey, that probably Bill Manning and the management team did not handle that situation well. Again, I just wonder, even if Bob had was this sort of fait accompli? Like, if Bob's gone, then he doesn't see a future here because his idea was to coach?
Not at all. Not at all. People get fired all the time. It's the way that this happened. It's the way that it shook out, and the way that a club that owes their very existence, they owe every brick in that training facility to Michael Bradley, decided almost unilaterally that was no longer the case anymore. I mean, if there's one person that deserves extra attention, that deserves to be coddled, that deserves the participation medal, despite getting cooked by, what's the kid's name again? Who cares?
Duncan
McGuire. Duncan McGuire. It's Michael Bradley. And, the man is a font of patience. He's a font of discipline. He's a font of motivation. And we emptied that tank. John Molinaro released a video blog today where he put it out, with no kid gloves. The club should be embarrassed to the to the custodial staff about what happened with Michael Bradley. They should be embarrassed. And I hope they are, because it's an abomination. It's an absolute abomination. Just to answer the question, I don't think never. I say never say never. I do think there is a future where Michael Bradley comes back after European adventures, certainly when there's been a changeover in the front office, to do what he should with this club, which is to coach it. It's the natural progression. And I would hate to think that we'll get robbed of that opportunity somewhere down the line. It sure as F ain't happening right now. I mean, the man couldn't wait to get out of here. And I'm fine with it. I'm Team Bradley.
Well, look, I wish I could say that I was like super angry or shocked or something like that, but that's kind of par for the course on how the club has dealt with legends in the past, right? Like it's for the most part par for the course. I mean, realistically, probably Justin Morrow is the only one that I could really think of that really kind of left on actually a pretty good note, right? Like, from that perspective, right? Like the whole reason this TFC Legends things in the South End got built, with myself, with Annie Hart, like, is because the club wasn't going to do anything for these players. Like they weren't, like, and it was just a thing. We were just like, hey, let's try to do something to show that love. And it's funny because I spoke to Michael very quickly before he left the field on Saturday, and the one thing I told him is, I'm sorry that you didn't feel like your family could stay here and be a part of this community after your career was done on the field, because I think it's a big loss. I think it's a really big loss to
Massive loss.
Not just the club, but I think that, like, it's just the soccer community here, that he's not going to be around. And I've talked to him before about how he loved being here and his family loved being here and he saw a long-term future here, but clearly something broke at some point, and he saw the opportunity in Norway and took it. And I can't blame him for that. It just really sucks.
It really sucks, but honestly, I think that in a roundabout way, he'll be a better coach for this little break from easy. And Alex is saying it here in his essay, disagreeing with everything that I've said. There is a nugget of truth in what Alex is saying. I take the opposite view of Jeffrey most of the time. Thanks, Alex. Sign up for my newsletter. MB wasn't good for the past 4 years, and the constant catering to his whims was frustrating. I think MB is not the worst offender here, but there is a grain of truth there. The club does have a habit of letting people get too comfortable. Seba's exit, where all decorum was gone, Josie's exit, etc., etc. I at this point I'm over being mad about his exit, because it could make me hate this club. I mean, it really, really could. Like the watching his highlight video get dumped in the middle of the first period of play was just unbelievable. Like I almost lost it. Had I been warmer, I probably would have, but like I almost properly lost it. It just felt so rushed and forgotten, and that's the last thing that this man deserves. And absolutely, whatever. I think he'll be back. It won't be anytime soon. I think that this adventure is going to be good for him. More experiences, chance to fail, not here, because I don't want to see Michael Bradley fail as a coach here. Hopefully it works out for us. There you go.
Yeah, I think it's best for his coaching career, as you said, Jeff, that he begins his career elsewhere. I think there's too many things that have transpired, especially over this last year, that would have made it difficult for Michael Bradley to remain a member of Toronto FC in the fashion that he has been a member of Toronto FC, in the sense that I think everything that he kind of built here, a lot of it has that standard has certainly dropped. And I think everyone knows what that bar is that Michael helped set. And the bar is obviously, the hope is to obviously get back to that bar and even, go beyond that bar. But it's so far below that another year at Toronto FC, it wasn't realistic. So for Michael to go and have and he's had obviously a lot of exposure to Bob, but just to play a part in that coaching world now and actually be able to run training sessions without, having to participate in training sessions, to be on the sidelines without having to play games. Um, that part is going to be a bit of maybe a different mental challenge for him. So for him to be
Mhm.
able to do that overseas, I think is great for his career. And yeah, I'm with you, Jeff. Never say never. But yes, it won't be anytime soon. We'll also have to see how he does as a coach, right?
Yeah,
I
that's fair.
personally, I think Michael Bradley is going to be a fantastic coach because of not necessarily because he was the most skilled player or the best player, more so just the habits that he instilled. He did things the
Yeah.
right way. And I think that's why I believe Michael Bradley will be a really good coach. It's the mentality part of it, not necessarily just because he was a good player. And also, center midfielders, sixes, those guys can read the game and they know how to read the game the right way. So
Yep.
if you look at a lot of the coaches around the league, a lot of them are probably either center backs or sixes or eights in the midfield.
Yep.
Those for me make the best coaches. So yeah, we'll see. I guess where his career progresses, and hopefully, I'm personally hopefully selfishly that one day it ends up back in Toronto as a head
Me
coach.
too.
That would be poetic.
Yeah,
too.
it would be fantastic. Okay, guys, let's put a capper on this one. Thank you again for listening to another episode of Toronto Till I Die. To the community, we're going to continue doing shows, obviously, in the off season, as Jeff mentioned earlier. I just want to take a moment to really thank you for listening to us all season. I know this hasn't always been the funnest podcast to listen to because we have to, we've been a little negative. But look, we can only give what the team gives us, right, in terms of talking points from that perspective. But we really appreciate all the regulars that are on and in the comments and chatting with each other, connecting with us either at games or through social media. Some of it good, some of it critical, and that's completely fine as long as it's been sort of above the belt and things like that. So I just wanted to thank you all. For those who are listening and who are brand new, thanks for joining. Hopefully you stick with us through the off season as we try to navigate you to 2024 and hopefully better waters. If you are watching this on YouTube, and you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and give us a thumbs up. That would be a big help. If you're now listening to this on podcast version the day after, if you are on Apple, throw us a nice little review. That'd be great. If you're on Spotify, hit us with those 5 stars. That would be amazing. For Michael Singh, for Jeffrey P. Nesker, I'm Mike Newell. We'll see you next week, guys. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
And wait!
It's done. Yes, Mr. Frodo. It's over now.